Good morning, friends. Today it's supposed to rain. Right now it's just kind of cloudy. Um, I don't need to move the blind for you because I already looked outside earlier today. So, I guess I can get right into what I'm going to talk about. Someone gave me a request actually to talk about communism. I guess not really specifying what about it exactly, but just wanted me to talk about communism. Um, I guess what I could talk about is, well, first of all, I think that people have a misconception as to what communism actually is, and this is where you get all like the socialists and communists talk about, well, it's not real communism and all that, because the reality of it is, in the ideological standpoint, is that it's first of all, it's never existed in any scenario whatsoever. I'll just put that out there. But the thing is that it's a realized utopian state in which you have a nation or a society free from all government, and everyone is working to the best of their ability and are able to acquire to whatever they need, right? So in that essence, it doesn't exist in that sense because it's never happened yet. And pretty much every ideology, whether it's conservative, whatever, capitalism, socialism, all of them, they're all basically going after the same thing, which is communism. Ironically, if you read Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand, who's known as being one of the biggest proponents of capitalism, her utopic state in which you have all of the wealthy industrialists and artists living in this secret society, that in itself is a communist society in a sense. It's everyone in a world free of government and everyone working to their best of ability, and they are all getting their basic needs, which is kind of the ironic thing, is that she basically was a proponent of a communist society in some way, but the means were completely different, obviously. For many communists, the means to communism is socialism, which is obviously completely different than what capitalism is, right? This is where it's kind of the ideological warfare that goes on, because it's not really, everyone's kind of fighting for the exact same thing. The only difference is how it's going to happen in the future. How are we going to get there, right? So, people think that capitalism never works, and which is kind of a naive thing to say. How can you say it works or doesn't work, right? Nothing has worked ever in the history of mankind. So when people say capitalism failed, it's like, all right, well, yeah, so is everything else. Big deal. And then you have people who are big proponents of socialism because they want their perceived notion of what real socialism is, which really doesn't exist, right? Real socialism is whatever leader you have in charge decides for it to be. A lot of people have this weird notion that socialism just means having free healthcare and basic income, right? But that's not really what it is. If you want to talk about real socialism, because real socialism is where the government centralizes all of business and all of capitalist pursuits so that private owners don't have that power, and the government can enforce and make sure people do their job and make sure everyone gets paid and everyone has benefits, so on and so forth. That's real socialism, which has been done a lot of times already, right? You have the Soviet Union, you have communist China, you have Cuba, you have I don't know, people don't consider Venezuela a socialist country, but it's still doing that. It's still basically a centralized system, and those all fail drastically. But then you have places like Norway and Denmark or wherever, where people say these are socialist countries. Well, it's not necessarily the case. They're just countries that have free healthcare, and they have certain benefits, right? That Americans or Canadians don't necessarily have. You can argue in that case, if you think that those very simple things are socialism, you can say the United States is one of the biggest socialist countries in the world, because you have free public education, you have a strict minimum wage in every state, you have the necessity of requiring a license to do many forms of business or many forms of jobs. So these are kind of things that you could argue are socialist, right? But people just sort of attach themselves to this ideal. It's basically like the word of socialism is like cool, because it's like everyone's like working for society, it's for the greater good of mankind and all that. But that becomes a very vague thing to get behind, right? So when people say that they're full proponents of capitalism or they're full proponents of socialism, it's like, to what degree, really? Like, what exactly are you arguing for, right? It doesn't even... It's like they say that they're in this mindset of an ideology, but the reality is like, I've never met two socialists that agree on everything about what socialism is, and I've never met two capitalists that agree on everything as to what capitalism is. So, in that essence, these two things don't really exist as ideologies or anything, really. They're just sort of these vague concepts where you have people who believe that, people should be free to do business as they please, or honestly, I don't even know what socialism is anymore. It's just kind of like this weird thing where people just feel like, oh yeah, we just want to do what's good for people, and that means free healthcare, or saving the environment, or getting equal work or something. So I just don't really buy into that a lot, and I kind of get bored talking about it now. I used to be kind of interested in that the past year, just because it was something that was so new to me and so new to understanding this concept. Because I'd say like a couple years ago, I'd probably like define myself as a socialist, and then after just kind of like learning about it, and then learning the history of it and how it basically murdered 100 million people around, I kind of realized that maybe it's not the best thing to get behind, because you're basically risking the lives of millions of people in order to try to make something work. Or if not just people's lives, you're risking the economy, right? And it's the same thing for like, free market capitalism. You're risking the economy and people's lives for an ideology, which is why I'm very careful when I'm trying to think about where my stance is in terms of politics, because people have been trying to figure it out for thousands of years, and myself, who's like a 22-year-old, probably hasn't figured it out yet, and probably never will. And I don't think all these crazy people out there that think that they know it all, and they think because they took 2 classes on political science that they understand and they know what it is, and they're full proponents of socialism or free market capitalism because they're super knowledgeable. And I would say that I guess I am more leaning towards free markets, but I don't want to go too far into that mindset, because at the same time, it's like the deeper you go, the more it affects your ability to be open to change. So if I'm in a state where I'm living in a free market system and it doesn't work, obviously, and people are dying and the economy is shit, and if I'm so solidified in this mindset that it does work, then I can't get out of that, and I can't shift my mindset, which is something I'm working on, and it's something that's very difficult to deal with, especially on an integrity basis, right? So anyway, someone wanted me to talk about that, and I did. And that's my thoughts on communism in general, which is that it's not real. And my thoughts also a little bit on capitalism, which again isn't real. And that's about it. Thanks for watching.